Alright, so in this video I'm going to briefly walk you through how I approach using and enjoying oud oil that is high grade. I'm going to share with you my approach, my strategy, and kind of some of my philosophy for what I do and why I do it, in hopes that it will maybe add some richness or help you get into it a little bit more deeply. Now, the two oils that I'm using in this video are Sani Soul, which is from Sri Lanka, and Tigerwood. Both oils are from the Atar store, and I will link them down below. And just depending on what date you're watching this video, the Atar store may not even exist anymore because the store is closing on February 14th, I believe. So if it's before that date, I would recommend checking it out ahead of time. So the first thing to get out of the way is that I think quality is of the utmost importance here as a consideration. The styles of distillations that these oils are the high grade, high end Taiwanese styles, which is, in my opinion, my favorite, or it is my favorite, and in my opinion is one of the better qualities of oils. Now there are, let's say, lower tiers of oils that you could maybe use differently. You could just kind of swipe them and lather them on in just more of a general scent. Whereas the way I use these oils is much more focused, and you can really zoom in, you can really get a lot out of it because there's so much depth, so much, almost kind of a hologram. It's sometimes very multidimensional depending on how you come at it, or different factors which can change the overall experience, as contrasted with other oils which are just kind of one-dimensional, meaning the experience you get from them is what it is. It's not going to go deeper, it's not going to evolve, it's not going to be really anything other than just that one thing. And that might sound weird if you haven't really dove into oils of this caliber, but if you have, then you know what I mean. So because they're such high quality, the price tends to be higher, so I tend to notice that I use less. So I just use a tiny little dot. And in just a couple of minutes, I'll put on another oil as we walk through this whole thing. But I just started off with a tiny little dot on my hand with the Sani Soul. So for me, I don't really use a lot, because I noticed that at a certain point it seems like I kind of get nose blind, or my system just kind of shuts down where it's diminishing returns. So when I start with an oil, I usually like to use almost the least amount possible, like the tiniest little dot, and then kind of work up from there. Sometimes it gets better, sometimes it gets fuller, but at a certain point it seems like it just, for me, just kind of drops off. And I've had oils that I get really excited, like, I'm going to put on a ton, and then I'm like, I don't smell anything. So I've noticed with this caliber of oils, less is more. I just kind of want to get that out of the way. And that helps them also last quite a lot longer in terms of the value proposition. So in terms of actually inhaling or sniffing it, it's like, I don't know, kids used to sniff glue in school. This is like really advanced, expensive form of sniffing glue in a way. So how to sniff it in the best way possible. So one tip that I can share with you that I haven't really seen anyone else mention is actually focusing on the back of your, almost your nasal cavity, back here. Instead of focusing on the tip of your nose, when I inhale, I drop my awareness back, or it's like way back in here. It almost feels like it's slightly below my eyes, rather than just going, oh yeah, that's fine. Really dropping my awareness back, further back in my skull, basically, to almost like, especially with oils of this caliber, I can almost taste them in the back of my throat, and I can feel the aroma like getting in the back of my tongue, which is a testament to the quality and the thickness and the potency. And I think also the fact of just dropping the awareness further back. So to me, I think that's a really important thing to play around with, and can really help enhance the experience and help you draw your awareness more inwards as well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the second component is there's two different ways you can inhale. There's just the long, just a long constant inhale. Or there's more of like short bursts where you're like, so those are kind of two ways that you could go about it. And then I think the third way is you just kind of have a little bit on and then you forget about it. And then it's almost like you have a little bit of incense around you. It's just kind of in your space and you're just occasionally or sometimes completely getting whiffs of it all the time, depending on the potency. Like this Sani Soul is extremely pungent isn't the word, but not because that pungent's the aroma, but it's extremely strong in its projection, let's say. And I've noticed that with quite a few Sri Lanka oils, they just tend to be loud. And this one, even from a tiny amount, is very, very loud, very, very noticeable, and last quite a long time. So that's kind of the basics. Another sort of thing that I will do is that if I have my V vial here, this is Tigerwood, sometimes I don't even swipe. I just basically wipe it on my hand. So depending on if it's been in my pocket or I just got it, that's basically all I need. I didn't even need to swipe it. I just kind of wiped the bottle. So if you don't have a V-vial, I'm not even going to try to show it. I don't know if you can even see the glimmering of the oil on my hand, but that's really all I need to do. And I have a tiny amount on my hand, but that will last me quite a long time. So that's another way to do it if you have the vials. Obviously, if you don't have a vial, you have a standard bottle with a stick, then you probably can't do that. But basically, if I had a vial and I had my stick, I would just do like a tiny little dot, which I guess I'll just go ahead and do for the sake of it. This takes a little bit of concentration because sometimes if you're not paying attention, you can get like a really fat swipe of it, which is not the end of the world, but if it's not what you're looking for, then it's not what you're looking for. So I tend to just dab it on, really make sure I get it all off of the stick. If it's a really, really, really high grade clean oil like this, sometimes I'll even eat the stick, or not eat it, but just lick off the tiny remaining amount. If it's a lower quality oil, I would definitely not recommend that and definitely proceed at your own risk. So now I have basically two different profiles, right? So this is the last sort of approach that I'll share with you in this video, which is sometimes to really get the most out of an oil, you need to have point and counterpoint. And you'll notice, especially with oils that are really high quality, that if you do them by themselves, you'll get one thing. But if you contrast them with a different kind of profile, you might get a very different experience. For example, these two oils, the Tigerwood and the Sani, they're both have some characteristics that overlap. Versus if I did the Tigerwood next to a Hainan oil, then my experience of the Tigerwood would be much more earthy, a little bit more, like a hardware store, meaning these like fertilizer, mulch, earth, pungent qualities would come out of it. Versus next to the Sani, I get more of the sweet Malaysian fruit with some of those other earthy notes, but they're definitely toned down. So, but next to the Hainan, which is much sweeter in a way, and like a clean, dry citrus sort of sweet, then that tends to highlight the darker, more earthy qualities of the Tigerwood. So you can start to play around with different point and counterpoint characteristics of different oils. You do them side by side, and sometimes you really will notice a lot of differences. Now again, I'm doing this with higher quality oils, and if it's your sort of cheap, low grade cultivated Cambodian or Thai or Vietnamese oils or many of the things that make up the vast majority of the market, you might not get this kind of experience, because those tend to be pretty one-dimensional. Whereas this is really difficult to put into words because it's almost like a high-grade perfume, because there's all these different notes that are perfectly layered into each other, top, middle, and bottom notes. And then that is something which evolves and changes over the course of the dry down and the course of the oil developing on your skin. Now, I tend to not really rub it in. It obviously depends on how much you use. If you use like big fat swipes, then yeah, you can kind of dab it around, put it around your neck, put a little bit in your beard, or put a little bit around your chin, things of that nature. So yeah, without rambling on too much, that's basically how I use oils and my overall approach in terms of if I really want to get the most out of it. Because if you're going to spend a lot of money on oils, then you probably want to get your value for it. Whereas I know some people just kind of swipe and forget it, or have a very different approach, which is fine. There's nothing against it. I'm just sharing my particular approach because the vast majority of my oils are, actually pretty much all of them are just as high grade Taiwanese style distillation. So anyways, hopefully that's been helpful, and I will talk to you soon.